the meeting. All right, special meeting on May 2nd. I pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
liberty and justice for all. Can she pledge to our flag over there? Yeah, I'm not sure. You should have took the crown off of the pledge to our flag. I said, God save the queen.
Oh, God, that's so weird, right?
All right, again, we're here to set our mill rate, our new mill rate. Our budget is passed, and Brad, you want to make a little presentation?
Yeah,
about this?
correspondence minutes.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, let me jump right there. Anyway, any correspondence for him? No, okay, great. We have the minutes from the April 11th meeting. Has everybody got a copy of them in front?
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the meetings from our April 11th, 2023 meeting.
Excellent. We have-
Honored, second that.
Excellent. We have a second. Is there any other discussions? Is everybody here for that?
I'll have that.
Yep, that's it. All in favor?
Aye.
Record show unanimous. Thank you, Cynthia. Yep. All right, Brad, last thing on the agenda.
All right, as we've been talking all along with the budget that was proposed, nothing has changed at this point. Obviously, the state doesn't have their budget. So we're gonna go with what we've been assuming from the state all along. The calculation makes our mill rate 28.43.
What is it again? I'm sorry, 28.
28.43. It's a reduction. The previous mill rate was 34.59. It's almost an 18% decrease in mill rate. But as we know, because of the revaluation, it's not an 18% reduction in taxes for people. It is just an 18% decrease in mill rate, and everybody's taxes will fluctuate based on the revaluation.
Okay. I'm sorry, what?
It makes sense.
I know we're gonna do the car also. Do you want to do them
So-
separately?
We'll talk about that in the past. Like 5 or 6 years ago, the state was talking about capping cars at 32. Since the town sets their mill rate ahead of the state because we're so much better and more efficient. That year we capped cars at 32, anticipating that the state was gonna make us anyway. The state didn't. And then in subsequent years, we just kept it at 32, because we know the state's always been talking about eventually eliminating or capping the car tax. Last year, they finally did put a cap on it. I think they did 5 or 6 years ago, but it was high. It's like 40 something. They capped it at 34 something, 53 or 32.53, something higher than the 32 we kept it at. We looked at some stuff. I think it's probably time to put the two back at the same mill rate. We looked at some options that if we kept the cars at 32, what would that do for the median homeowner? And it might actually cost homeowners more because it would benefit businesses more. Because if you own 2 or 3 cars in the house, an average household, your cars would go up. Like one example, I looked up, the cars went up $200 and the real estate went down $100. So it didn't seem to make sense. I think eventually the state will keep lowering it. So at this point, my recommendation is just resetting everything at 28.43.
Nick and I had a chance to talk about this today, and obviously I had the rest of the day to think about it. I think it's a great idea to cap it at or get it the same as the real estate mill rate. Especially now post-COVID, it seemed like the car values skyrocketed, inflation.
Yeah.
Artificially, I think, just because of the market. And it's giving that average homeowner that might have 2 or 3 a little bit of a break to offset the increase in value of these used vehicles that they're trying to afford to have in the driveway. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and it makes sense. And in the time that like residential went up 35%, industrial went up 15%. The commercial side's already kind of getting a break by the reval itself. So I don't see the point in adjusting the cars up and further bringing down our mill rate. That would just give them more of a break. I think keeping it, setting them both at 28.43 is the right thing for the average homeowner. Obviously, there's gonna be outliers. If you have 3 really old cars, but a really big house, you'd rather the adjustment, but you know.
But, Brad and I talked about today, Target would love that because I think the mill rate would go down to 28.0 something.
28.12.
28.12. So their taxes will go down a little because they don't have any cars. You know what I mean? And then putting more burden, like you've said, onto the people with the houses, you know what I mean? You know, so.
And they're commercial property owners, so they've already recognized much savings.
Well, but yeah,
Oh,
that's how the reevaluation.
Yeah, well, right.
It's just the rebalancing, but it didn't seem to make sense in a time that the shift was going more to residential anyway. To do something that would shift it actually a little bit more.
Right, so I'm the new guy, so this really is like double jeopardy, because this year's budget, we had a reval, but we're not gonna have this double-edged sword for 4 more years, correct? Because we're doing reval every 5,
Yes, so reval is every 5.
so it just really looks ugly this year because we're recognizing both gains.
And the
Yeah,
COVID.
but it's gonna,
Yeah,
the reval reset it for the next 5 years.
that's what I mean, right.
So residential is up for the next 5 years.
No, that's the.
Until we look at it again. Hopefully, the housing market stays up and the economy stays okay and we don't hit a big recession, that the values drive down. Because
Yeah,
the worst
because
thing
if
you
you're
want to do is
selling
your
that-
value, your assessed value being up here, the market readjusts down, but we don't assess again for 5 years. Or
Only if you're gonna sell in that market, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but again. Whatever your value is set by the reval, unless you do something to your house, is that value for 5 years. So we're hoping that the housing market. Typically, you want it to go up a little bit, but because it's up so high. I think most people would say if it holds flat for the next 5 years, I think that's a decent sign of the economy, but. As Bob Manfred has been warning us for years, we're overdue for a recession at this point.
Brad,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong,
Yep.
cars are reassessed every year.
Correct, cars are done every year. And last year, there was a huge increase
Oh, yeah.
in car values. This year, there's an increase, but it was just the normal turnover of. People get rid of old cars and buy new cars. So the values were up this year, but last year, the car value was like $2 million in tax money.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
But I can assure you that coming from the Board of Assessment Appeals. That people are coming in frustrated with the increases in their used cars.
Yeah.
Their assessment. I mean, I was kind of stunned myself.
Yeah.
Buying a used car and then a year later seeing the taxes. Significant increase.
Go up, not down, yeah.
And then when I asked, obviously, Chairman of the Board of Assessment Appeal, I gotta ask Izzy, and she's like, well. The value of that vehicle is now like 20% higher.
Yeah.
How could that be?
Yeah.
The supply chain issues, this and that, used cars just went through the roof.
Hello, hello.
I'm sorry. Yes. Cynthia.
I'm just, on the TV screen. So, I have a question, and I've only been on the Board of Finance for 8 years, so I probably should have asked this question 7 years ago, but it just seems to me that if the idea of setting the mill rate is to try to keep it, I mean, is this to try to keep the budget as the least painful it could be? Because it seems like if Brad has the formula for it, why do we go through this exercise? Like, what power do we have to control the mill rate?
Well, by charter, the Board of Finance sets the mill rate within 15 days of the referendum.
Right.
I understand.
Right.
Or if it's
Yeah.
formulated, why are we discussing it? But I think it's just for knowledge for people more than anything else. So,
Well, it seems like kind of a moot point. I guess you could call it that, making it, that we're setting it, but we're really not. Because what could we, let's say, what if we didn't want to set it at that rate? Could we as a group set it at another rate? That's a question.
since the mill rate is set by the Board of Finance, I think the Board of Finance set it at whatever you want. It would just, there would be ramifications from collection standpoint. But I do think if the board really felt strongly about setting cars at 32 again, they could.
Okay. What do you think, Chairman?
No,
On the
again,
question,
on your question about
Yeah.
the bill rate.
right, I'm just a point of fact, if it's, if,
Are we
I'm not
talking,
trying to be contrary, I'm just asking the question because logically it doesn't make sense to me.
all right, so most of this discussion has been about cars. The question.
No, I'm talking about the housing. No, I know, but I know the cars, we can adjust that.
Okay, well, that's what most of our discussion was about, but are you talking about we shouldn't take Brad's recommendation to pay the bills?
I'm not saying one thing or another. I'm just saying when it says we set the mill rate. That's all. I mean, we just vote based on what Brad tells us,
And I would
which is
agree with that. I would agree with that, and I think per charter, it's our job to set the mill rate, but we have
right.
information from our comptroller of what to set it at. Is
Okay,
that, are you saying we should make a motion to set it at 27?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that logically, that would be a thing. That's all. I'm not saying I want to do it. I'm just saying it, the language makes it seem like we can.
And it's just part of the, what I understand is part of the process that this is a formality, we're taking his recommendation, but we have to do it, so it's in a minutes, and that's part of our charter. So that,
Okay, I hear you.
Can I go deeper with her question? So I think what and Cynthia, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we artificially didn't take Brad's recommendation and made it 30, then we would be overtaxing the resident, and then we would pay our bills, and the balance of that money, because we overtaxed, would just go into the general fund, correct, Brad? Is that?
Yeah,
And then the other side of it, if we set it prematurely lower than the controller's recommendation, we wouldn't have money to pay the bills.
correct. You'd have to do something subsequently to fill that hole.
Right, so I think we're trusting you and your recommendation on the formula to pay the bills without overtaxing the residents above.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's the best shot we have as a board to try to do the right
Yeah.
thing.
I'm not saying otherwise. It's just, I'm saying when it says that the Board of Finance sets, it's just a language, forget about it because it's just language. I understand exactly what we're doing and why we do it. So let's do it.
Just to let you know the history. Board of Finance, there has been attempts on the Board of Finance. 26, 27 years ago, they did try to actually raise the mill rate higher than what was needed.
Oh, scandalous.
Yes, so it's not unheard of.
Would someone
Okay,
like to make a motion?
Did Bob, do you have something you want to say?
I'm sorry.
Yes, I'll be brief. I think the difference between this year and like Cynthia, the prior 8 years that I've been on the board is that the recommendation this year, again, it's just math, but the recommendation this year is to have the same mill rate for real property and property, which is like cars and.
That's a different discussion we're having.
Yeah.
yes,
So I think all we're saying is the conforming of the mill rate is a simplification. I know we see lots of questions about, well, why is my tax higher than on my cars and my real estate? Well, we're eliminating that, simplifying it, and going back to Brad's recommendation of just doing the formula at the across the board rate of 24.
Yeah. Good point. And that has been different than the last 5 or 6 years, because we did set 2 mill rates.
Yeah. I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
We're discussing it. It's funny.
Good. D, you're all good?
Discussing that all the time.
Oh, what? I'm all for it.
Thank you, Cynthia. I was just asking Dee if she had anything.
Oh, I was low.
And we set the mill rate at 28.56, is that correct?
4.3.
4.3, sorry, for our 2023-2024 budget season.
Second your motion,
And does the cars need to be added in that, or? it's
No,
the
it
flat
doesn't.
one?
We're
The
setting
mill
that
rate,
mill
we
rate.
only did one mix.
Excellent. So we have a motion, we have a second, any other discussion?
I think we discussed it prior to the.
All in favor? Aye. Let the record show unanimous. I'd accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Excellent.
Wait, we have to do the car tax, don't we?
Oh, it's just one.
It's all done.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I didn't hear that part. Sorry. All right.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Let the record show unanimous.
Hey.
Thank you, everyone.
Mimi, Scouts.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
These are for Brian.
Everybody can take that motion. Sorry.
These are for Brian.